What do the founders of Calm, Planet Organic, Photobox, Moonpig, Shazam, Mumsnet, Last Minute, WeTransfer, Albright, and the School of Life all have in common? They all put their brain first and start their day with Heights. Heights is the smart supplement for brain health and cognitive performance using plant-based, natural ingredients designed to help you thrive. Listeners of this show can get 25% off their first month with the code LEADERSHEIGHTS at www.yourheights.com.
Hello listeners, and welcome to another episode of The Secret Lives of Leaders, the podcast show that brings you the very best information, insight and intelligence from some of the greatest leaders, entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, journalists, authors, you name it, from the entrepreneurship community in the UK. And this week we actually have a guest, second in a row actually, from outside the UK, born from Australia, with the very clear distinctive name of Alicia, not Alicia as I continually called her. So I do apologise to Alicia for the many times she had to correct me during the interview. Rich, what can we expect in today's episode?
Well, firstly, I just checked. It was actually our third guest in a row that's outside the UK. We had Reshma before.
Oh, very good point.
Yeah. Anyway, so we can expect lots of fun because Alicia is a very fun person, but she's also incredibly smart. So she goes into the history of her starting Skimlinks, which was originally called Skimbit, with her co-founder Joe, coming to the UK from Australia, not really knowing what to do, but on the way kind of getting involved with the London tech scene, going on the original web mission, where a lot of other companies like Huddle kind of went on, and a few others, people like Ollie Barrett, were on that one, and that's kind of almost the formation of the London tech scene. So she was really part of that, and we go through the whole highs and lows of Skimlinks, and right now they're a pretty big high.
That's true, and I think a really nice insight from Alicia is the appreciation of enjoying your company and absolutely not seeking to exit. So not being focused around exit. It's not that they would turn down offers, but it's more that she's very much in it to enjoy the ride and enjoy the journey rather than trying to focus on the outcome, which I think is definitely a lesson to be learned for a lot of people just starting up especially, and what real motivation is to build successful companies.
From Runway East Studios in London, welcome to The Secret Lives of Leaders.
Today's guest is the co-founder and CEO of Skimlinks, Alicia, not Alicia as she always reminds me, Navarro. Described by the Sunday Times as an Aussie geek, Alicia originally started her entrepreneurial journey down under, but with not much success. Having had two companies fail, she had one more roll of the dice. In 2006, with 60,000 Australian dollars, which is 33,000 pounds, but slowly climbing, she started, as it was then known, Skimbit, with a team of developers in Romania. The idea was simple: enable businesses to earn a commission on web links and content when they redirect customers to other retail sites. 10 years later, the company is now called Skimlinks and is the market leader in the space, and lifting Alicia up to be one of the most well-regarded entrepreneurs in the London technology scene. She once said, "People who start a business believing the hype will be disappointed. It's wonderful, but you'll probably never sleep or date normally again." So on that note, welcome Alicia.
Hello, delighted to be here.
I mentioned in the introduction there's a quote from The Times calling you an Aussie geek. When putting together some research for this podcast, a close friend of yours actually referred to you as a popular dork. Have you always been a bit of a nerd?
Absolutely. I mean, completely. I was the kind of person that taught myself how to touch type by borrowing a book from the library and learning on a typewriter, which gives you an indication of how long I've been doing it. And I taught myself how to code when I was 10, again from books and my first Commodore 64. And that was, I used to go to math enrichment programs for fun after school. Yes, I was a geek.
What does maths enrichment program mean?
Apparently, I was not actually very good at it, but I did find it fun. You go and you do hard maths problems for fun.
Okay, I'm going to jump straight into it and ask you a very simple question. Do you see yourself as an entrepreneur?
I do, yes. I think I kind of have for a long time. I think when I was young, before I knew what the word meant, I called it a businesswoman. I always wanted to be a businesswoman. And then when I was old enough to understand what the word was, yes, I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Okay, so you see yourself as an entrepreneur. How else do you see yourself?
Good question. I think I see myself as a very tenacious and passionate lover of pleasurable things, as in food. I love music. I love travel. I'm hedonistic in that sense. And so I think that all my life it's been the pursuit of doing things that give you that sense of you're either building something or relishing something.
Is it a difficult question for you to be asked how you see yourself? Are you introspective and do you think about this kind of thing? Or if it's sprung upon you, do you feel uncomfortable trying to work out what it is?
I could talk about it for hours, but I don't think that would be very interesting for anyone else.
So we actually asked your oldest friend, Jen, how she saw you and what she thought about you. So she's actually said Alicia's defining characteristic is her self-confidence. And at school, she was best known, as we mentioned, as a popular dork. She also says you're fiercely competitive. And she would like to know if you've finally forgiven her for beating you in the finals in your exams.
By 0.5%. I can't believe it.
So the answer is no.
No.
You are sitting here shaking your head.
We were very, it was the defining, it was a kind of hilarious feature of our friendship, but we battled it out between who would get first in each class. And sometimes I beat her, sometimes she beat me. But in the final exam at the end of high school, yes, she came top of the school. She's the smartest person I know. I came after that.
So she's also asked me to ask you about what it means to be if and but.
It was one of the most inspiring and meaningful relationships I've had in my life has been with my maths teacher in high school. She was one of the people that kind of transformed how I saw myself. And she was just very entertaining and very inspiring. And Jen and I would sit at the front of the class, being the dorks that we were. And she would stand up there and teach. And Jennifer, who was the very, very intellectual, gifted one, would question every theory that my maths teacher put up on the wall with, well, if you do this, you could do it this way and this way and this way. And so she was always coming up with like an extrapolation of a theory, whereas I was very argumentative. And so I would say, but that doesn't make sense because of this, but that doesn't make sense because of this. And so, yeah, we got the nicknames if and but. She was if, I was but.
Fair. Have you always been quite happy to be thought of as but? Do you feel like that's still with you today?
I think that's a fair description.
Okay.
I do like to question things, yeah.
Are you fairly contrary?
Sometimes for the fun of it, sometimes because I really like to understand things, sometimes because it's quite fun to see what happens if you question things that are sometimes taken as given.
We haven't actually done this, so there is not a trick question, don't worry. But if we were to ask Joey, your co-founder, if he found you contrary or difficult, do you think that he would say yes or no?
He would probably answer exactly as I've just said, that yes, that I like to understand things and that I am not afraid to question things.
Fair. So if but is the kind of person that you are comfortable being and you understand about yourself, and you've also mentioned being hedonistic and essentially a go-getter, and also been described as a popular and confident dork. Does that all fit with how you want to be seen, or what is the kind of person that you wish other people saw you as? Is there any sort of desire of, I wish people looked at me this way, but?
No, I think that I guess another very defining characteristic is that perhaps related to the confidence is that I'm not scared to be who I am. And I think that's come a lot from my parents who always taught me not to have any shame in being who I was. And so I don't care if I look ridiculous, which I often do. I think I can be quite a ridiculous character, but I take quite a bit of pride in the fact that I'm not scared to be publicly ridiculous.
Were your parents both business ladies?
No, they were working class and worked really. They were both migrants. They were migrants to Australia. From Spain and Cuba. They knew no one when they came to Australia. They didn't know the language. They didn't have jobs. They knew no one, and they built like a life for themselves. Quite interesting, I guess. My father was an electrician. he was studying to be a lot more in Cuba, but was affected by the communist regime. And so because he refused, due to his incredible principles, to pretend to be allegiant to the Communist Party, was denied his scholarship places and denied his university place. And so he could only be an electrician. But did well out of that. Went to Spain, met my mother. They came to Australia, and mum was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was working until my dad had a bad accident and broke his back, and so he was in a body cast from his neck to his knees for 3 months. And my father was like the ultimate, like Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, Marlboro Man type. So this was a really destabilizing and impactful accident. He was likely never to walk again. They managed to put plates in his back and he could walk, but he couldn't work. So my mother had to go and work because we had no other money. So she worked at a dry cleaner, pressing. And my father went from being like a very masculine man to taking care of to raising 2 daughters at home. So he was cooking, cleaning, doing all the household chores while his wife went to work at a dry cleaner. And on the basis of that salary, they sent both me and my sister to a private school. That was the only luxury we ever had. We didn't even, my mother made my clothes, or we got hand-me-downs. You know that you don't look as good as everyone else, so you just have to kind of find an inner strength in that. But I guess that's what, it inspired us to study hard. My parents kind of emphasized the importance of good education. So I studied really hard and managed to get myself a scholarship for high school and a scholarship for university. So, to answer your question, were they enterprising? Not in a business sense, but certainly in a life sense. If it wasn't for their hard work and the principles that they taught me, my sister, I don't think I'd be where I am today.
So does your sister live in London?
She does, yes.
And what does your sister do? And are you close?
We are very close. She is also really interesting, not in a sort of a traditional entrepreneurial sense, but she's also very enterprising. She's the opposite to me in that she's very process and operational and, structured and disciplined, whereas I'm more imaginative and unstructured and so on. And so she's always worked in operations roles for either sort of big government or big infrastructure projects. And she moved to London and worked for some startups here in London in a kind of senior operational role. And then decided in her sort of mid-30s that she was also going to chase her dreams and quit her job, her well-paying job, and went to chef school, the Cordon Bleu school. And a year later, she's working at a 2 Michelin-starred restaurant as a chef on minimum wage.
Yes. So 2 very successful ladies from an enterprising family. Do you feel successful? Is that a fair way to think of yourself?
I think that it can be sometimes difficult to see that when all your friends around you are equally achieving a lot of incredible things. And so sometimes when you're around that circle, the delta is not so great, so you don't see it as successful. But I think it's really important to take a step back and go, compared to what I dreamed of wanting when I was young, look how much of those dreams I've ticked off and how much of the life I dreamed of I actually am living now. So yes, I feel successful.
Correct answer. Do you actually look up to anyone specifically, or is there anyone who particularly inspires you as a successful person?
Good question. I was thinking initially when I read your question that it was around like who was like my mentor or.
Did you have a mentor?
Well, I was thinking about this, and I think the first person that made the biggest impact to me was this maths teacher, Katrina, who I just admired. She was this ballsy, cheeky, funny, naughty teacher in this like very prim and proper sort of Catholic convent school. And she would sometimes, instead of teaching us maths, would make us watch Pink Floyd's The Wall video because she said we'd learn more from that than learning about calculus today. And, she was just very irregular and inspiring. And she saw something in Jen and me. We were the dorks that thought that we, were not destined to do anything. And she just used to tell us, you have no idea, like so much is going to happen in your life, much more than anything I've ever achieved. And she was the first person that made me believe that I I could be destined for something special. And yeah, I have a lot to thank it for.
Skimlinks is 10 years old now. When you started it, did you think that 10 years later you'd be running the same company? Because I think that we see this a lot nowadays, that there's entrepreneurship has become quite popular, and people see, companies like Instagram or, others like rising to success in a few years. And that's actually a very big misconception, and it takes a lot of hard work, and, very few companies, are successful overnight. How has the journey been? Like, has this been a lot longer than you originally thought when you'd set out? And when you did set out, did you think you would succeed?
I think, like everyone, when they start, they absolutely think that you're going to work a couple of years, become phenomenally wealthy, and then not have to work again. That's the delusional fantasy that probably most people, even if they don't admit it, probably have when they start this journey. And I think I did too. And I remember one of my seed investors, Robin Klein, said to me back in those days that it takes 8 to 12 years to build a successful company. And I remember thinking, God, no, I hope I'm an outlier. I hope I break that tradition. But I haven't. And now that I'm in the thick of it, I can see why. Like, it's really hard to build a big business that can adapt, that scales, that takes advantage of opportunities as they come. And I think the secret has been to find joy and delight in every stage of the process, which thankfully there has been. Like, no 6 months at Skimlinks is the same. And I feel constantly like I'm learning and I'm being challenged, and there's a new frontier that I'm trying to overcome. And that's what keeps it exciting. And it still is. Like, I still love going to work. I love the people I work with. At the moment, my job has evolved and it's different to what it was even a year ago. But yes, I never thought it would be this long. But then I don't think it's been one job that whole time. I think that if you kind of break it down into phases or responsibilities, it's been many different journeys and phases.
And is there another 10 years?
Perhaps. I think there will be a time when I'm probably not the best person to take the company even bigger. If its destiny is to continue to grow on its own, then I'm probably, at some stage, I may not be the right person to do that, because I think I thrive more in a earlier stage company. I'm enjoying the process of learning how to be good at this sort of scale stage in a company's life. So for now, I'm really happy, and who knows how many more years.
Can you describe Skimlinks, and can you tell us what the difference between the vision you have for it is now to the vision you had for it when you set off 10 years ago?
So Skimlinks is a content monetization platform that helps publishers get rewarded for the role that their content plays in creating intent. So what that means is that the concept is that when you read content on publisher sites like BuzzFeed, like on Gizmodo, like on Refinery29, you're reading about products and brands and shopping, and that process of reading inspires you to buy something. And what our technology does is help capture that intent and reward the publisher for it. On a technical level, what we do is we track the click-throughs on product links and content all the way through to conversion. We collect a commission from the retailer and we pay the publisher. So it's a way that publishers can get paid this incremental revenue stream from the products that they write about without having to show ads or do anything different. So it's, and again, for those who are even more proficient in the worlds of digital marketing, it's a way of automating affiliate marketing on behalf of publishers so that they can make it a ubiquitous revenue stream. So there's lots of different ways to talk about it depending on how technical or aware you are of how digital marketing works. And how different is that vision to what I started? I think
is that the vision? That's the description. So what's the vision? What do you actually like? What would be the ideal outcome where you can go, you know what, this is exactly as big as I ever wanted to take that?
Yeah. So when we started, the vision was about automating affiliate marketing and making that process easy, mainstream, ubiquitous. And over the years, what we've realized is that affiliate is only one way that you can quantify and and reward shopping intent, and that the content to commerce journeys that people make can be rewarded in ways beyond affiliate. And so a lot of what Skimlinks is working on now and what its vision is to go beyond just affiliate and just cost per acquisition and start to find and start to reward publishers in different ways for the role that their content plays in creating intent. So the ultimate vision is about creating, think of it like in the same way that Google monetizes ads and text ads, we ultimately want to extract the most value in the most unannoying way from normal editorial content.
Are you threatened by the evolution of what I guess we call distributed commerce, the evolution of mobile and how fractional that's made the whole customer journey, but then also how platforms will emerge, Facebook, Instagram releasing their commerce features soon. How does that really affect your business and your vision for where it goes?
I mean, if our vision is about taking advantage of being able to extract value from any content to commerce journey, then it encapsulates if that journey takes place on mobile or on social platforms. So we are busily building tools and attachments and APIs that will help monetize instant articles or mobile apps or any other number of ways that you can digest content or buy something.
And what is your ideal outcome for Skimlinks? Do you seek an exit? Do you seek a trade sale of anything of the sort? Or do you seek a profitable company that you can always take dividends from? Do you ever think about it in those kind of terms? I say, do you ever think about it? Obviously, every single founder ever thinks about that. So we can remove that crap. Obviously a ridiculous question. But yeah.
And you, as a founder yourself, that's an awkward question to answer because you can't build a company solely for the purpose of selling it. You think you do at the beginning, but actually when you're in the midst of it, you realize a company is more than a future paycheck for you. It's your team's careers. It's your customers' trust. There's all these other aspects that you value that aren't properly rewarded necessarily by aiming for an exit per se. So what your goal has to be is to build a great company and fulfill your vision. If that goal is best achieved by becoming part of another company whose assets match yours and can help you better achieve that vision, help better take care of your team, help make your customers even happier, then that's a good path to pursue, but you shouldn't pursue it for the sake of it. I now have a responsibility that goes beyond myself.
How easy was it early on? Because obviously it's a chicken and egg kind of thing. So on one side you've got the publishers and the other side you've got the merchants. How easy was it to kind of get one on? Was it ever difficult? I mean, it must have been difficult. Every company when you start, it's difficult trying to get customers. Is that trying to explain the message of what your company does? How long did that take before you really kind of saw that people kind of got what you were about?
So our marketplace was made a little bit easier to build because on the merchant side, we didn't go direct to merchants. We aggregated the affiliate networks. So there's a smaller number of those. And once you did technical integrations with each of those, which to start with, we probably did 10. We're now at about 55 integrations. But to start with, we probably launched with about 10 integrations with affiliate networks. And through them, you get access to thousands of retailers. So it was very easy to scale on the demand side. And so then we focused on having direct relationships on the supply side. And that was, a matter of just relentlessly going after publishers and establishing a rapport, a trust, an excitement in what you were doing. And it's been hard because we pay publishers, but it's not the biggest paycheck that they make. And a lot of what my job has been is about getting publishers to trust that it's a journey and step 1 looks like this, but step 5 is going to be this, and join me on this journey and I'm not going to let you down. And that's what it's been. And now it's really exciting when for many of our publishers, we are at step 5. We work with the likes of, BuzzFeed and Hearst and Condé Nast and, pretty much any large publisher that talks about products in some way works with us. And it's so exciting that now we have learned so much about what works and the best practices that publishers who do well, this is what they do. And being able to share that and then see publishers succeed and do really well and start to make commerce a really significant part of their overall revenue mix is really exciting. And, to finally be able to repay the trust that early customers had in me is really fulfilling.
So as a maths geek, can we quantify some of this excitement? Can you talk to us in numbers? Give us some big numbers that are attributed to the Skimlinks team. So, I'm not talking about revealing revenue figures or anything, but just, give us some big, large numbers that if you were in an investor pitch, these are things you talk about.
So we work with about 1.5 million websites around the world. And then through them, we see the content to commerce journeys of 1.6 billion people every month, which is quite a lot.
How many is that a percentage of the internet?
That's a fifth
it's
of the
significant,
world. So
actually.
that must be a third of the internet.
Yeah.
So.
It's a lot, and we
It's 100% of the internet minus porn.
well, these are devices, so you probably want to, for people that have multiple devices, you lower it down, but it's still.
Edit that out, make it sound big.
We're picking it apart now. This is what the investors do. Sorry.
Yeah, no. And then through. So through them, we see the transactions of about $700 million a year, and are able to see all the journeys that preceded those transactions. And what else is going to be interesting? I think that's all quite interesting.
How many are in the company?
About 85.
85.
85 across 2 offices?
Correct.
London, New York.
Yes.
Where are your offices?
In London, they're near here. They're just off Pitfield Street in Shoreditch. And in New York, they're in a WeWork in the Flatiron District.
And where are you enjoying more at the moment, London or New York? You've just returned from New York, so
yes.
Slightly biased, but you're currently in London. So
I enjoy both. I'm at this kind of quite fun stage of my time at Skimlinks, where there's a lot of travel, which can be really exhausting, but it's also travel to fun places where I now have a lot of friends, and my job is to evangelize, to meet with clients, to kind of make sure that everyone in the team knows the vision and feels connected to the overall culture, and that's all really fun.
Can you please share with us your funding history? So the timeline, how many rounds of funds you've actually raised, how much in total, and do you have any further plans for fundraising?
Yes, so we got it's been quite a lot of different funding moments. So it began, I'll go through the whole thing. We had a seed round at the end of 2008, but because that was taking a while to close, we got a bridging note before that. So bridging note, seed round, then we did an A round a year later. So the seed round was about £500,000. The A round was just over £1 million. Then we did what did we do next? I think another convertible. Then we did a Series B. Then we did a B2, and then we did a Series C about a year and a half ago.
And that's taken you to how much in funding in total?
About $25 million.
Okay, so 25 million US, not Australian dollars, just making sure it's real money.
That is correct.
Okay, good. And do you have any further plans for fundraising? Do you think about it like that? Are you at a point now where you're like, I'm still thinking about fundraising, or actually I'm thinking about hopefully never fundraising again? What's in your gut? What's in your heart?
We are. I do not want to raise again. I think now is the time for us to become EBITDA positive. So that's what we're working towards.
How close have you ever been, if ever close, to running out of cash?
Thankfully, never dangerously so. There's been times when we knew that our round was closing shortly, and we had to make sure it closed quickly enough. But I've never missed payroll, and I've never really fretted about that. I think the worst it's ever been was pre-seed, when I was just trying to get that first bit of cash. That was the worst, because I spent a year trying to get my seed round. And this is in 2008, if you recall, which was not a good time to be raising money. So it was the recession was hitting, and it was unpleasant and took a long time. And I was eating into my own savings. I was borrowing from friends and family. I had bank loans. I had anywhere I could find the next month's payroll. That's all I was focused on every month. The most terrifying it ever was when I was, again, pre-seed, and I was just trying to make enough money to pay each month's payroll. And I was £500 short on payroll. And I needed that because one of my employees at the time was moving out of into a new home, and he needed money for his house deposit. So I couldn't not pay it, and it was the lowest I've ever been. And I remember I talked to a friend, and she invested £500 in the business. She exited and made a very, very good return on that £500.
That's amazing. That's fairly unconventional, but I guess, okay, so just a little insight into your fundraising strategy. So I guess slightly different for you. Everything is stressful. Doesn't sound as stressful as some circumstances you hear when actually, you've got like £500,000 to pay next month and you're a week away. You hear those stories quite often. But regardless, I'm assuming as a human being, like anyone else, you get stressed. And there's lots of ups and downs in the journey. So can you share a little bit on your on this section, which is body and mind, and actually give us some insights into your mental state? Have you ever reflected into it over the last 10 years, how it's developed, how you see it? And I guess deeper, have you ever felt like you've had depression or anything like that?
That's a lot of questions there, Dan.
Technically the same question, really, just a massively long sentence.
I think getting your head in a good shape is a prerequisite to surviving this journey, because it is the most high and low and high and low. And I think the only way that you can cope is if you come to expect that volatility and come to be comfortable with a certain degree of stress. So that just becomes the baseline as opposed to being identified as stress. And you learn to find comfort and release in different ways, and to find and to sort of provide a framework for providing a work-life balance. So I prefer not to work at home at night. I like to come home and that be my sanctuary where I can just train myself to switch off. I used to try not to work on weekends, although that no longer applies. But yeah, I think I probably suffered a lot from anxiety, and I don't think I've slept well in years, even now. But you get used to it, and so it doesn't become something that bothers you anymore.
And reflecting back, do you feel like you've maybe got a better balance in your anxiety and mental state now than maybe 5 years ago? Because each 5 years, I guess you're particularly more experienced than the last.
Definitely, yeah. I think 5 years ago, it was very stressful. I was traveling a lot. I think 5 years ago, I was living in San Francisco, setting up our US office there, and I was flying between San Francisco and London every month. I was trying to be a remote leader, which is, it turns out, really hard. Especially when the kind of leader I am is a more, in-person, warm, energetic person. To try to be that kind of leader via a crappy Skype voice connection is very damaging to relationships and to your sanity levels. So, and I was traveling a lot, and I'm not a great flyer. I was very lonely as a result of it, because when you travel a lot, people stop inviting you to things because they're not sure if you're going to be around. So that was probably the hardest time. Sleep wasn't good. I was very rattled, and the work at that time as well was really hard. I was trying to do a lot. We were going through a big transition, and that was very tough. I mean, I feel like in a luckier place now, because I have a superb management team. My team throughout the rest of the company as well are fantastic, and we've continued to hire really well. My job has kind of evolved, so I now don't have to do any functional things so much anymore, and my job is to manage the executive team and set a vision and be external facing, which I find quite enjoyable. So, and I've just gotten, I think, much more comfortable with stress, and I feel, because I've gone through and survived so many crappy things, that now I feel like no matter what comes my way, I'll be fine. I'll survive somehow. So that gives you a sense of peace.
Valid. And I guess just listening to your story about flying back and forth from San Francisco and knowing what I feel like when I do lots of journeys and your fitness regime can get so disrupted. Have you ever had problems staying in shape? And for anyone that can't actually see because they're listening, Alicia is a beautiful, slender lady and looks like she's never put on an ounce of fat in her life. But just out of curiosity, do you work hard to stay in shape? And have you had problems with that along the way?
I think I guess I'm quite lucky in that I've never really fluctuated that much in size. I've obviously been a little bit bigger at times, but not to the point where I've ever felt unhappy with my body. I like who I am. But yes, I try to exercise and stay fit. I think my saving grace is I don't like sweet things. So eliminating an entire food group of anything that contains sugar in it probably helps, but I make up for it by eating a lot of fries and cheese and pasta. And the times I do that too much, then I have to kind of then pull back afterwards. But yes,
So what do you do to stay in shape? What's your thing? Is it yoga, Pilates, running?
I actually have come across the best combination at the moment that is working for me better than anything I've ever done. And it is basically walking to work. So I now live about 17 minutes from my office and I walk to work rapidly and briskly. And I do about 30 minutes of yoga on my living room floor a couple of times a week. And I do this thing called a 7-minute app, which does this kind of high intensity weights and squats and lunges and so on. And I do that many mornings. And that has been the most effective exercise for me, more than going to the gym, more than anything else. It's very easy.
What do you eat for breakfast?
I'm obsessed with eggs.
Okay. All types?
Oh, yeah. Usually scrambled.
Eggs for dinner. So I beat that. I literally had eggs last night for dinner.
I feel like eggs are almost always the answer to almost any question. Yes, in various forms. Omelette, scrambled. I make this awesome egg souffle in the microwave, which is the quickest and easiest thing. It's so cool. You get this little microwave dish, you crack 2 eggs in it, you put some hot sauce, some salt and pepper, put in the microwave for a minute and a half. While you're doing that, you get a rice cake. Sometimes you put a little bit of cream cheese on the rice cake, but you don't have to. Then you take it out, plump it on the rice cake, and that's my breakfast.
For any of our budding entrepreneurs listening, that would be described as breakfast, lunch, and dinner in your first year. So it's actually a useful hack, that one.
Olivia's cookbook will be available all good bookstores as well.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so on the yoga note, are you spiritual?
I think probably less than people that actively define themselves as spiritual.
Religious?
No.
Scientific, obviously.
Scientific, but I do believe in a power of a human spirit. I don't know what that is. I'm probably agnostic in that sense. I'm not 100% sure that there's nothing, but I think that probably most of the world's religions are not right. Sorry, don't kill me. But yeah, I think I don't think I'm as spiritual as a lot of more spiritual types.
People say entrepreneurs are crazy. Are you crazy?
I think I'm occasionally delusional.
Okay, blissfully delusional. So, I mean, can you share a story of a time you were crazy and or just delusional?
I think you have to be, to a degree, to do some things, because some of the greatest innovations came about when no one else was doing something, but you were utterly convinced that you were going to be right. You have to believe you're invincible. You have to believe you're destined for greatness. You have to believe that you're a god in some way, because it's a mythology that helps you survive. And my job is often to create that, what's that thing called that Steve Jobs had, the reality distortion effect. So yeah, I think I'm told that I do that too. And I think I kind of know I'm doing that sometimes, but I think that that's an effective way to create cohesion and unity and passion in the people around you.
Fair. That actually leads us nicely on to our last section, which is around lessons and failures. So what pisses you off?
About other entrepreneurs?
Yes.
I get pissed off when I meet, and I put in inverted commas, entrepreneurs who think that all it takes is a bit of hard work and a good idea, because that's the easy bit.
Why does that piss you off?
Because they're destined to fail. I know that sounds awful, but it's absolutely true. Like, it takes the really great entrepreneurs, when you meet them, you see that there's something else there. And I think so. I think there's a big debate about whether it's innate or whether you could be taught it. I think it has to be innate. I think that there's something in the eyes and in the character and in the magic that surrounds people that are destined to be good entrepreneurs, because it's not just the idea and it's not just working hard. It's somehow being able to convince people over a long period of time to follow your vision, even though they get paid poorly and it's stressful and it's probably not going to work. And that's the hard bit.
Do you think that a lot of it comes down to confidence?
I think it's not just confidence. I think it's partly that delusional aspect that I mentioned earlier. I think you need to kind of believe that you're destined for this, which is completely arrogant, but also a necessary self-belief. And I think that it's also a type of charm. I think it has to be.
What mistakes do you actually see other people doing that wind you up then?
That's a good question. I get pissed off when I guess I see entrepreneurs that think that it will be easy to raise money, and that actually isn't it terrible that investors aren't giving them a chance? What pisses me off is that they don't realize that investors are not there to be like an X factor judge that maybe if you try hard enough, they'll see something in you. An investor is looking at investing other people's money and trying to make a certain amount of return in a certain time. So you have to prove that you are an investable asset and that you have the ability to execute over a long period of time, over insurmountable and persistent challenges, and deliver a return compared to everything else that's in the market. And if you can't do that, you are not going to be a good entrepreneur.
Okay, so some mistakes there. What's the biggest mistake that you've made in business?
I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is that title creep is ultimately very dangerous. Take
us through that. What's title creep? This is interesting.
Giving the first engineer that you hire the title of CTO is not going to be a good thing. You're either absolutely going to fire them at some stage, or you're going to have to break their heart and demote their title and bring in someone above them. And I've had to do both of those things, and neither of them are pleasant.
So what happens if you have a developer and he says, I'd like to be called lead developer, and there's only him, or there's two of them? What's your response to that?
It depends how good they are and how much you care about having them around. I really do believe now that title creep is a very dangerous thing, and you should never give a title unless you're convinced that that's going to be a worthwhile title for a period of time. I'm still even learning that today as we're bringing in we're bringing in more levels in the engineering team, because I think engineers often have the challenge of there not being as many levels of promotion that you can achieve within a bigger engineering team. So we've actually brought some in so that there's a sense of progression and achievement within the engineering team.
What's your biggest personality flaw?
I'm very tenacious and I don't like to be wrong.
Okay. Sound like a lot of other people that I know, so fair enough. Probably in quite good company a lot of the time. Can you please tell us what the best piece of advice you've been given is?
I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, which I now repeat a lot to young entrepreneurs that tell me how they're really trying to get a really good valuation right now and how they're going to go for that investor versus another one because of valuation. And the advice I give them, which is what I was given back then, is valuation doesn't matter. It's the terms that matter. And it's the fact that you're here tomorrow that matters. And getting a really great valuation, but that means you can't raise again on an up round. And that means you probably go under. That's bad. A great valuation, but with terms that take away your control of the board or that make it very difficult to achieve an exit or another up round, that's bad. The most important thing are the terms and the investors that you choose and the fact that you're doing whatever it takes to still be here tomorrow.
What other advice would you give? I mean, this is a tricky one because you've just shared lots of nuggets of great advice, but you seem like a fountain of knowledge for everyone. So one last piece of advice to young entrepreneurs that are just starting off today.
Well, I'll answer that with what I tell my team and my executive team when things are tough, which is the best way to get through this is to imagine that this is just a game and we're just really good at this game, and I hope that we win. But if we don't, it would have been fun anyway.
So it's a mindset thing.
It is a mindset thing. It's a way to kind of, no matter what happens, like sometimes you know what it's like when really bad things happen and they're going, fuck, how am I going to deal with this? And I've just trained my team to just sit there and giggle when that happens. And we just sit there and giggle and go, right, let's see how we're going to deal with this one. Isn't this hilarious? This is hitting us again. Oh, it's a game. Like, we'll get through this. And that becomes the way that we react. And I've trained everyone to do that. And it just makes the journey worthwhile.
Are you a feminist? And what does that mean to you, if I ask you that question? Because you've got a big smile across your face, like it's a complicated question to you. So what does that mean, that question to you?
It is a very complicated question to answer because I think feminism means different things to different people. I don't like where some aspects of modern feminism are going. I think that they're damaging to women, and I'm not. I definitely do not subscribe to to any kind of feminism that assumes that men are by their nature rapists, or assumes that men are evil and deliberately trying to bring down women. I don't believe that the reason that there aren't more women in tech is due to anything other than not that many women necessarily want to be in it. Nothing has ever stopped me getting anything I've wanted in technology or anywhere else, but especially in technology, where it's, to my mind, a complete meritocracy. And so I'm not a fan of a lot of aspects of modern feminism that take the perspective that someone's out to get them and that they're a victim. I'm not a victim, and I have no respect for people that treat life as if they are. So
from a mathematical point of view, your perspective on the difference between men in tech and women in tech is purely based on choice and just what men and women gravitate towards as professional choices and nothing more?
I believe that if being a woman is the hardest thing you have to deal with in life, you're fucking lucky.
If you could start all over again, would you rather sustainable, profitable business in year one or high-growth tech startup all over again?
I think it would be fun. I don't know, actually. I think the next business would be probably a fast growth one. I think I love the idea of building things and seeing them explode.
Would it be a business in e-commerce and content or something else completely?
I have ideas in both, so it depends what takes my fancy at the time, I guess.
Here's a tricky one for you. Would you rather raise money from investors you don't get on with at all or fail?
Definitely raise money from investors I don't get along with. I have in the past not gotten on with some of my investors, and I've still made it work.
Would you start again with the same co-founder, a different co-founder, or no co-founder?
I would be delighted to do it again with my current co-founder, and there's other people I'm working with now that I would love to start a business with as well. I don't want to do it alone.
Well, the good news is, by the end of the interview, I finally got her name right. So I think, if anything, 10 points to me for lessons learned and God loves a trier and all that kind of stuff. So not sure how you got it right the first time, Rich. Obviously, a more astute listener than I am.
It's called research.
And it's called friendship, I suppose, as well. Really, I don't have any notable excuse. So moving swiftly on, I think let's talk about the credit and merits of that interview. Just an energetic and awesome person with an awesome joie de vivre, happiness flowing through all her veins, and her spirit and attitude towards what she's building and how much she loves the sort of brand and the family feel and the culture. Definitely things to learn from. She's a total inspiration in every way. Next week, very different kind of guy, very different kind of lesson, very different kind of attitudes. We have an absolute titan of industry, Sir John Hegarty, who, for those that don't know, is one of the most influential and successful people ever in the history of advertising, as the co-founder of the prolifically famous BBH, who are one of the most decorated and awarded advertising creative agencies in the world, with a huge variety and array of successes, not only Cannes Lions and blah, 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 and multi-million-dollar contracts from some of the biggest companies and most famous campaigns you've ever seen, but also 7 number 1 hits from the charts for campaigns that they've actually run on behalf of clients. So an unbelievably interesting interview from our first Sir in the short history of the Secret Lives of Leaders, but hopefully not the last. Looking forward to Sir Elton John another time. But until then, Rich, can you please tell our listeners where they can find us if they want to tune in for next week's episode?
Yeah, so as always, you can find us on iTunes podcasts, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and on SoundCloud. Just search for Secret Leaders or Secret Lives of Leaders in any of those. And if you want to download or just listen to the podcast, the whole history of them, they are all on our website, which is secretleaders.com. If you want to get in touch, send us any ideas, any feedback, then you can do that by emailing us at hello@secretleaders.com. So stay tuned, and we look forward to seeing you next week.